Variables in PHP, as well as in other programming languages, are used to store data like strings of text, numbers, and other values that can change over the time or during the course of a script. Now, in PHP, a value does not need to be declared before adding a value to it, but PHP will automatically convert the variable to the correct data type depending on the value. Now, just to recap, some naming conventions in PHP, variables should start with a $sign followed by the name of the variable. And a variable name can start with an underscore, and we can see here these are some of the built-in PHP variables that we'll be using at some point throughout the course. So you can start with an underscore or letter. A variable name cannot start with a number, and the variable name can only contain alphanumeric characters such as letters, numbers, and underscore. So let's look at some of the different variables and data types that we have in PHP. So we can have num1, and we can set that equal to 12. Oh, my bad. First, we have to open up our PHP tags, right? So PHP, and we have to close our tag. All right, so now we can say num1, set that equal to 12, and let's have num2, set that equal to let's say 2.35. We can also have, let's say, my string, we are learning to code with PHP. We can also have a Boolean, so we can say, actually, let's make that decision, let's call it decision, true or false. So we can set this to true. And we can also create array variables, which we'll look at in a couple of minutes. So right now we have an integer, we have a double that stores a floating point number, we have a string, and we have a Boolean. So let us echo. We can do num1 plus num2, and we could put a string before it, like the sum is, and just remember if you're using singular double quotes, and let us end our line with semicolon, and let's echo my string, and also let us echo decision, and always remember to use your $signs, right? So let us save this, and we'll see that these values will be echoed. So let us refresh this, and we can click on our new file, variables.php, and we have an error. So undefined constant num1. Okay, so yes, like I was saying before, ensure that you always have your $sign before the variable. So now we can save this and refresh, and we can get each value. So everything is in one line. So let us do a bit of formatting. Let's include our BR tag. And let's copy it and paste it. Click on save and then refresh. And now everything should show up in its own line. All right. So There's a useful feature also in PHP, and we see here that instead of true or false, we get 1. Okay, so true or false is the same as 1 or 0. So if we had false, then of course that would change to 0 or nothing. Okay, so false is nothing and true is 1. So there is a very useful variable in PHP called the Var Dump Function, and if we just type var, we can see here Var Dump. And what this does, it allows us to find out, or the system will print out the type of variable. So if we ever need to know the variable type, for instance, decision, and forgive me, I keep forgetting my, there we go, $sign. So if we ever wanted to know what variable type decision is, we could save this and refresh. And we can see here that it's a Boolean and the value is true. Same thing if the value was false and we did a refresh, we see here that the value disappears, but if we do a var dump, we see that the value is now false. So if you ever need to know the type of a variable, and we can test this out for the other ones that we have. So let us do it for my string. And also let's do it for num2 because we know that num1 is an integer. Let us just do it for all of them. All right, so let's save this. And it goes ahead and prints out the different variable types. Okay, so the first one is false, and it's a Boolean string, and it has 33 characters, and these are the characters. And then we have our float and our integer. So it's a very useful function that you can use at different points in time throughout your coding. If you're not sure what type of variable is, you can just simply do a var dump, and it will print the variable type and also the value of that variable. In PHP, we also have what are known as constants, and we know that these are variables that the value never changes, right? They do not change. All right, so if we want to define a constant in PHP, we would use the define keyword, and it's a function that takes a name and then a value according to our IntelliSense here. So if we want to give our variable a name, we can say, let's for instance want to save pi. So we know the value of pi never changes. Pi is always 3.14. All right, so to set a value for it, we would have to separate this by a comma and then give it a value. So our value would be 3.14, and this will define our constant. So if we want to do a quick var dump of pi, let's refresh. All right, so this is saying null. Oh, obviously we don't need this, so let's save it. Right, so in this instance, because we're defining a constant, it's a different type of declaration than just a regular variable, because these variables can change over time, and with a constant they don't change. So we are not using the $sign when we define a constant. So to do a var dump of a constant, you just need a variable name and, or the name of the constant rather, and without the $sign, right? So pretty much we see here that it is a float and the value is 3.14. If we ever try to change the value of pi, of course we would get an error. So if we save this, try to refresh it, we're going to get an error, and it's on line 19. So when we ever try to change the value of a constant, it will not be allowed, obviously. All right, so that is how we would declare a constant in PHP. So if we want to define an array in PHP, so let us make a section here, arrays. We simply create a variable, and let's call this one my array. And all right, and let's just say my cars. We will use the array keyword, so we'll type array and open up our parentheses and start giving our array some values. So we have BMW, Benz, and let's throw a high-end car in there, Bentley. All right, and now this has basically defined an array with 3 elements and stored it in my cars. So if we want to do a var dump of this, we could say var dump my cars and save this. And let me comment this out for a second. So if we go back to our browser and refresh, we see here that var dump gives us an array of 3. An array at position 0 is a string with 3 different elements or string characters, BMW. The element at position 1, of course, is Benz, and at position 2 is Bentley. So if we know about arrays, arrays begin at index 0. Okay, so the first element will be at 0, and then the second element will be at index 1, and so forth. So if I wanted to print the values of my array, I can. So let me comment out this var dump for a second. So I can say echo I like all right, so I like the, and let's say, and we have to use our my cars, and at position 0 will be our BMW. So I like the BMW and the Benz. So my cars, position 1, right? But the Bentley, so dot my cars at position 2 is my favorite. All right, so based on our knowledge of joining a string or concatenating values in a string, we should get I like the my cars, position 0, BMW, and the Benz, but the Bentley is my favorite. So this is how you would break this array up and call the values at each position of the index. So let us save this and let us do a refresh. And we see here that we get our string just as we have formatted it. So when you're formatting a string, you just have to ensure that you have the spaces and the punctuation at the correct parts to make your string formatted properly. So that's what we have done here. We have included spaces where necessary and comma where necessary. And we see that we have gotten our array printed out, sorry. Another way we can declare arrays in PHP. So if we wanted a second array here, let's do an array of countries. We can also use the square brackets So let us do an array of some countries. So of course, let's put Jamaica, and then let us put Guyana. Let us put, what other country can we put? Let's put Russia, and let us put China. Hopefully those are all countries and not continents. All right, so we have an array of countries, and another useful function that we have built into PHP is the count function. So let's say we wanted to know how many elements were in our array of countries. We can simply do, and let me comment this line out for now. So if we want to know how many elements are in our countries array, we can call the count function and open up our parentheses, and we can just drop our countries array in here. So if we save this and run it, oh, sorry, I have to echo this. Right, so we get a value of 4 because there are 4 values inside of our countries array. But obviously, if we do a var dump of countries and do a refresh, we see that there's an array of 4, right? And let me just put a break here just to make everything readable. Right, so we have 4 elements in the array, and the var dump also says 4 elements in the array. And however, each index, the index count goes up to 3. So it starts at 0 and goes up to 3. So essentially, this is how we can work with our declaring arrays in PHP. You have 2 different ways you can do so, using the array function or by just using the square brackets.